Hey guys, we are back live at 5. Missed you last week, but we were celebrating Easter, as I hope you were. If not, I hope you at least spent some time with your family on last week. So we are back. We have been talking. Can you believe it's the end of the month already? I can't believe it. Seemed like April went by so fast, but we are here and we're talking about cycle. We spent this week um, talking about breaking cycles this month, rather talking about breaking the cycles in our lives. And we're going to do a little recap because what we've done is we sort of kind of defined what a cycle looks like, and that's just repeated events that happens in our lives. It's things that we see that we're not fond of. They are repetitive in our lives. Sickness, hooking up with the wrong people, always having the wrong kinds of relationships, people coming in our lives. So these are the cycles that we are talking about, because there are such thing as positive cycles. There are good cycles that happen in our lives where you can get caught up in doing good things, meeting the right people, or creating the right circumstances or situations in your life so that they can give you that positive outcome and all of that stuff. So we're going to put, hey Sonia, we're going to put the good cycles on the back burner for a minute, because we all like the good cycles and we all appreciate the good cycles. So, but we want to focus, we focused on the negative cycles that keep recurring in our lives. It's causing us to feel like we are stuck, that feel like that we're not moving forward, we're not going anywhere, we're not doing anything, we're not accomplishing anything. And this is what we are talking about or talking to this month, over the course of this month. And we're coming to a close. But because we missed last week, I want to sort of kind of recap what we've talked about. We've had some good discussions about what cycles are. You guys have been, some of you have been candid about the cycles that you have dealt with throughout your life and trying to identify. And that was one of the things that we had talked about, having to identify what a cycle looks like. And then the next step to that, we tried to figure out where they were in our lives, because cycles uh, don't have to be all inclusive. We talked about that, the different cycles, negative cycles in our lives. It doesn't have to be all inclusive. For example, you can have a very good eye or very, very good intuition as it relates to uh, relationships. You got the right person, you guys have connected, you bonded, you consider this person to be your soulmate. But then there are cycles, negative cycles that take place. Like, for example, in your finances, you cannot seem to get your finances in place and in order. So there's a repetitive cycle that's going on. You stay broke, you're still living paycheck to paycheck, you're still doing all of these things. And so cycles don't have to be all inclusive. Most of the time, cycles are found in particular areas of your life. We've mastered certain areas, and there are other areas that we've yet to master, and we are dealing with cycles in our lives. And I think that that is the case for most of us. If you look at your life in particular, and perhaps somebody that you're close to, you will find that there is always that one cycle in a particular area, and it's not all inclusive. So that's what we've been talking. Let me hear your thoughts. Talk back to me. Talk with me, and let me see what you've defined. Because I've given you several assignments over the course of the month. One of them, you were to write a letter to yourself and identify what those cycles were in your life and address those cycles to yourself. Then I asked you to just burn it and get rid of it and just start thinking new thoughts. Because when you create a cycle, your cycle is tied directly into what you think and how you think. And the more you think about it on the inside, the more it's going to be seen on the outside. So that's one of the things that you need to be brave enough or courageous enough to identify in your life. Make sure that you are brave enough to see where these cycles keep showing up in your life so that you can get rid of them. And then we talked about too about how to get rid of these cycles. And you can't get rid of a thought without replacing it with a better thought. Because if you get rid of a negative thought and you don't replace it with anything, you're leaving yourself open so that the same old thought processes that you're trying to get rid of, it leaves them a door to come back in. So we have to make sure that as you get rid of a negative thought or a negative cycle, you replace it with something that's more productive, more progressive, that serves you better than that negative cycle. You got to think, because what happens on the inside will be seen on the outside. So what are your thoughts? Those of you that's always my talkers, talk back to me. Let me know what you think as far as these cycles are concerned. And have you been able to identify cycles in your life? That's one of the things that I wanted to talk about today, particularly. Have you been able to identify even more cycles as a result of this month's theme about breaking cycles? Have you been able to identify some cycles that you hadn't paid much attention to as it relates to your health, as it relates to your finances, as it relates to the people that you hang out with, as it relates to your evolution moving forward in life? Have you been able to identify cycles that you hadn't labeled as cycles up until now? So let me hear what you have to think, what you have to say about that. Have you been able to identify? And then the next piece of that is those cycles that you knew were there, or those cycles you have identified over the last 3 weeks. Have you taken any steps to start getting rid of those cycles and breaking the cycles that is happening in your life? And what does that look like for you? That's what I'm curious to know, is have you taken any necessary steps to start breaking some of those cycles? Because we all have them. We all have them. For me, I've tried to sit down and identify cycles. I started looking at the people that I interact with closely, not just people that are fly by nights or whatever, but I started identifying people and seeing if there was a pattern in the people that I sort of kind of connect with on a regular basis. And then if it was a caliber of people that I wanted to veer away from, then I started looking at myself, because it is said that we are the sum of the 5 closest people to us. So I had to start looking at myself and start thinking about how I saw myself and why am I attracting this caliber of person, or why am I having, like, all of my friends are this, and and I'd rather have friends that do that kind of stuff. So just sort of kind of self-reflecting over the last few weeks as we've talked about breaking cycles. I've even looked at my finances, and that's been a major one. I am a strong proponent for retail therapy, and that has become a cycle, because anytime I feel like I need to encourage myself, I'll go out and I'll go shopping, but I needed to break that cycle because I didn't want that to have the power over me. There are other things that I can do rather than going out spending money, rather than going out and feeling like I need to go out into a shopping center or something like that. There are other ways that I can sort of kind of empower, encourage myself. So I have been taking some time to really sit back and identify where these cycles are showing up in my life. And one of them, again, of course, as I said, in my finances, and then taking a look at some friends and stuff. So yeah, Denise says, when a person has many cycles, it's hard to determine if it's a cycle or a personality trait that have been defined as a part of your makeup. My habits are what I am identifying and making positive thoughts. Yeah. When you say that there are personality traits, is that something that you have allowed the cycle to identify you as, Denise? Or is it a part of your makeup of who you are? Can you see that? Because I feel like that cycles can groom us into feeling like it's a personality trait because we've dealt and been in those cycles for so long. That's why I use the example for me about retail therapy. Like, for years, that has been my go-to, and and I can say it works for me, it does wonders for me, can't be a cycle. I'm real good at really managing what I spend when I go out. I set a budget and all this stuff. So is it a character trait? Is it my personality trait that I'm just a shopper? Or have I allowed this cycle to groom me into thinking that that's who I am? Are there other ways that I can get rid of stress? Are there other ways that I can feel um, more empowered during those weak periods without having to go out and buy a new pair of shoes or buy a new pair of pants or whatever? So I think I love what you said because it's really making me think, because sometimes we let cycles create personality traits, and we let cycles create characteristics that are not necessarily who we are. It's just as a result of these cycles we have become. And I think there's a fine line between that. But I really get that, Denise, and that's a good point. That's a good point. And that's why I think it takes a lot of courage to identify these cycles and be brave enough to sit back and really self-reflect and say, you know what, maybe there are other ways. Maybe if I change the way that I think, I can get a bigger bang for my buck and I can, just do things differently. I can break this cycle of feeling like I need to go shop. I can break this cycle and say, you know what, from now on, I'll paint, or I'll take up a hobby or a craft, one that doesn't require me spending any money. You know what I mean? So there are other ways. I think sometimes we, again, like I said, allow our cycles to create certain personality traits that we have evolved into as a result of some of these cycles that we are trying to get rid of. Okay, so thank you, Denise. That was a very, very good observation, good point. So just out of curiosity, how many of you have identified some negative cycles in your life? And you can just chime in and say me or whatever. You don't have to go into any detail. I'm just curious as how this series have helped you find some places in your life that have been a constant repetition of a negative outcome, because that's what we're talking about. Bad cycles, breaking these certain cycles, like, eating or drinking or smoking or anything. Have you identified these cycles that have gripped you and have allowed you to live in these cycles, and now you're realizing that these cycles or habits have changed? Benny says he has identified some cycles. Yeah, Denise, I think you're talking about, to my response, it says it can be both, but when you identify the bad habits, whether it be a cycle or a build makeup, they can be a positive change. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I have burned my negative cycles and I've stopped allowing broken cycles. This is coming from Sonia. Broken cycles to groom me and my personality, etc. But I haven't reflected any ways to replace these cycles as of yet. Good, and that's what you're going to have to do. Something you're going to have to figure out some positive behavior, some positive reinforcement to replace and put in the place of these cycles that have been broken. Otherwise, you're leaving room for these negative cycles to come back, take root, and then they'll be that much more harder to give. Denise, I appreciate you because you've been interchanging the word cycles and habits, and I think that they are very synonymous to each other, these cycles and habits, because when you break the cycles, you break these habits, and that's what we need to do. But you still got to replace them with some other things, because otherwise you're leaving space for these habits or cycles to come back in and take root again. And the next time that they come in and take root, you might not be as successful in getting rid of them, because they'll come back stronger and more powerful than they were before. So you need to make sure that you are replacing them. Catherine says, I'm truly trying my best to change my way of thinking about things in my life. It has not always been an easy journey trying to detect the negative cycles in my life. Thank you for bringing awareness to this subject. Kudos to you for trying, keep trying. And, you have to learn how to be honest with yourself. And I think that that's one of the most difficult challenges that so many of us face is we don't want to be honest with ourselves. And as negative as a habit or cycle is, when you're honest with yourself, that means that you take power back, you take control back in your life, and you're able to get rid of this negativity that you have embraced and allowing it to just continue and become cyclical in your life. So that's one of the things that I need to drive home to you guys before we end this series. We are uh, creatures of habit, creatures of cycles. So we all have cycles. Like I said, it's not all inclusive. Every aspect of your life is not always driven by a cycle. But for the ones that are, whether it's relating to your health, your finances, your children, your family, your relationships, we need to be brave enough to identify them. And we've got to want better, because if you want better, you can have better. But the only way that you can have better on the outside is if you start thinking better on the inside. Any examples or books on how to jumpstart a new positive cycle? I shared the book, I think, with you guys before by Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth. It's really about embracing new thoughts or new ways of thinking. So I'm going to enforce that again, or suggest that again, if you will. It's called A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And another one, I can't think of the name of the guy. Can you look it up? It's called The Untethered Soul. Untethered Soul is another book, and I can't think of it. It's Mike, somebody, I think, but if you Google it, it's Untethered Soul. So try those. That's pretty good. It's Michael Singer, Singer, Michael Singer, The Untethered Soul. That's a really, really good book. And all of those are geared around changing the way that you think and replacing old habits or cycles, if you will, and creating newer ones, more positive, more productive, more forward-thinking thoughts that will help you move. Um, yeah, so those two books are what I suggest that may help you. Again, A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle and The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. Those are both very, very good books. So yeah, any questions before we finish up this series of breaking cycles? This has been a good series for me, and I've learned a lot from you guys, and I hope you can say the same. Journaling has been a tool that has helped me. This is from Benny. Journaling has been a tool that has helped me remain transparent with creating new thoughts after identification of bad cycles. And that's it. That's it for me. I have absolutely gotten into journaling over the last 3 or 4 years, and I can see where, if I go back and look at something, an entry that I put in a journal, say 2 years ago, where my thinking was and how I expressed myself in written form, it's completely different. I can see the growth. I can see the evolution in my train of thought, in my way of thinking. Words that, where I've gone from futuristic thinking, like I will be rich one day, to more present tense thinking of I am rich now. And so I have evolved in just, and that sounds so trivial and it sounds so minuscule, but I promise you, just that little bit has transformed my life. Like, I don't have to, I don't have to always look for something to come. I can act like, believe, and embrace the fact that it's here now. I'm not waiting on it. I'm waiting on the manifestation of it. And that's a big difference, because if I can act, the phrase fake it till you make it, and sometimes that's what we have to do. We fake it until we make it, and we just keep growing that way. So like I said, I have watched and I've gone back and I've looked at some of my journal entries, and my writing has changed. And I'm really, in my journal, it's really writing exactly what my thoughts are as I sit down to write. And I can see a difference. So I'm breaking the cycle of that futuristic. I've never really been a negative talker, a negative thinker. I've always been a positive thinker. For the most part, I have my days, but for the most part, I'm a positive thinker. But what I used to do all the time is I was always looking for it to come. Like it will happen. It will happen. And you're right. The more I say it will happen, it pushes and pushes and pushes and pushes. So when does it happen? And I had to realize that it's already there. It's already happening. As I started writing those things down that I wanted to see happen in my life as if they were already happening, then I started getting manifestations. And it wasn't always something that I was looking in the future to have. And I had to act like I had it now. So that was one of the cycles. So yeah, journaling is amazing, Benny. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else? What are some of the things that you've done over the past 3 weeks that we've talked about breaking cycles? What are some of the things that you've done to sort of kind of replace those negative cycles with more positive ones? I think Sonia said that she's having some difficulty replacing those some of those negative cycles, and I can assure you, you have to learn how to do that. It's imperative that you learn how to replace those negative cycles, negative habits. And thank you, Denise, for giving me that synonym to cycle, because breaking those cycles, breaking those habits, that's what propels us forward. We get stuck and we think that this habit has created who we are, and it doesn't have to. It is helping to shape the lifestyle that you're living, but it doesn't have to create who you are, because you can change who you are simply by changing the way you think. And as a result of changing who you are, your lifestyle automatically changes. You don't have to do anything. You just have to think differently. You have to break these cycles. You have to break these habits, and you change the way you're thinking. And once you change the way you're thinking, everything on the outside tends to happen. Someone suggested journaling to me from Catherine, and it's helped me so much. I've come to a place where I hate when I miss a day of journaling. It can get addictive. It absolutely can. It absolutely can. If I don't get it on paper, I'll put it in my phone just to get thoughts out of my head, just to make sure that I'm staying focused. That's a big thing for me. Focus and balance is what I preach all the time. You've got to stay focused. You have to stay balanced. I think that's what makes you be at your best self, with being focused, being balanced, and allowing life to happen. And the more of these negative habits, more of these negative cycles you can get out of your life, life will flow just like it's supposed to for you. Life will simply flow like it's supposed to. You don't have to keep begging for stuff. You don't have to keep wishing that stuff will happen. It will just happen. You will just flow through life effortlessly, which is how we are supposed to live anyway. You know that? So listen, I appreciate you guys today. Thank y'all for sharing in this series with me. Don't stop breaking cycles just because we're at the end of the month. Keep identifying those cycles. Keep looking for ways to evolve. Keep looking for ways to become the best version of you that you can be. Identify those habits, identify those cycles. Create new thoughts in your mind. It's simply done. It merely requires you to change the way you think. Reading books, reading articles, looking at positive things will help you transform your mind and transition from a negative mindset with cycles and habits that don't do you any good to positive ways of thinking that will help you further evolve and continue to be that best version of you. Yes, thank y'all so much. I really appreciate y'all so much, Catherine and Denise and Sonia, Benny, and for the rest of you guys who have watched. Thank you so much. Listen, next Sunday, we're going to be on location doing Live at 5. We're going to be a part of an event where they're trying to showcase small Black businesses, and we're going to be in Winston-Salem next week, I think from 2 to 7. We will be in Winston-Salem at the SEG Conference Center on near the North Point area, if you're familiar with Winston-Salem at all, the SEG Conference Center. So we'll put that out. We'll put a little flyer, post a flyer today. So please come out and support us and the other local businesses that are Black owned in the Winston-Salem, Greensboro area. According to sources, it's going to be a big event with food trucks and so many other things. So just come out and make a good day of it. Look forward to seeing you there. Stop in and say hello. Make sure you see us and say hey and get some stuff. We still got some stuff that we want to tell you. I'm so happy about the book sales, the children's books that are flying off the shelf. I got a chance to talk with a group at UNCG, mentoring a group of young people, young kids on yesterday. Phenomenal. So hats off to that group. I think it's called Transform Greensboro or something like that. So thank y'all for letting me be a part of that. Go get our books, the books. And I got a new book coming out in the next month or so. That's getting published and printed. So I'm excited about it. This is going to be the one, y'all. This is going to be the one. And I'm super excited about it. And I can't wait to share it with you guys over the next few weeks. So you guys can go out and enjoy this beautiful day, this beautiful weather. You deserve it. Stay strong, stay focused, stay confident, stay defined. See you guys next week.